Welcome everybody. We have with us Matt Jones, who is going to present Keeping Up with the Pwnses with Talkback.sh. So over to Matt, and thank you.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks very much for coming. I submitted this for the 101 talk. It's not a technical talk, but I think it's a super relevant talk for people. I'm Matt, I work at Eltham, and this is kind of about a tool we've been working on at work for a while to support us. I was trying to work out how to introduce this presentation and thought that from an interview in the BBC in '99, there was an interview with David Bowie, and he was talking, or they talked about the uprise of the internet, and one of the quotes that came out of this was him talking about how with the internet there's going to be a weird interplay between mediums and people who produce content and people who are consuming content. And he also talked about how he thought the internet was from aliens and stuff, but this quote in particular was, I thought, really profound, because anyone who was around on the internet in '99 or late '90s and think about how information has changed to get to us, it's so vastly different. I was living in Melbourne in 2020, and I remember feeling super overwhelmed with the difference of my reality from the digital world to the physical world, being at home every day. And I was thinking about how, with mediums in this industry, we receive mediums via our phones, our computers, our work, and so on. But we can also choose mediums. And we might reluctantly choose mediums as well, but we can choose newsletters and podcasts and all sorts of things to keep up with news. But for everyone, we have our own mind map in regards to how we think about information, and everyone here would have a different mind map in regards to how you logically break down topics of interest and things that are relevant to you. Now, personally, at work we do technical assessments, and Dan and Zoltan were just talking about some embedded work we were doing, but we see so many different things across hardware and software and all sorts of stuff. And on the left is kind of how I think I felt in 2020, just the bombardment of information, but on the right is my target ideal state, what I kind of dream of. So some of you, maybe there's a few people here, maybe about, in 2012 I gave a presentation at RuxCon, and it was about a tool called Talkback. I have no creativity of naming tools, so I just renamed it the same thing. But basically, I was writing systems for tracking vulnerabilities and supporting workflows, basically. And I prototyped something around the late 2000s, which was monitoring people on social media talking about vulnerabilities. And it was really relevant because I noticed that in a lot of feeds we had that there was better quality data in social media. What I worked on was extracting out metadata from social networks, about languages and countries and kind of relationships, and then being able to plot kind of discussions about vulnerabilities, and I was classifying it about analysis, exploits, postmortems, and so on. And I could do bubble charts and all sorts of stuff. But one of the things I prototyped was thinking about this general problem, and I had a community of users which was about 30,000 or so people who had talked about vulnerabilities over a few years, and I wanted to find trends within those communities in social network, and then try to train and supervise coming up with a trending resource feed in a system. And the funny thing about it was I developed this, and there was a Twitter feed there was an RSS feed, and I was using Twitter predominantly, and then someone wrote a script to pass that, to put it out onto Twitter, and then I thought, oh cool, I'll put that into a newsletter. So there was a newsletter that was formed. It was like scraping stuff from Twitter, going through this process, going back to Twitter, then making a newspaper. But around this time, I just didn't have time to work on this, and I had all these ideas, but I was freelancing, helped start Eltham, and then had no time. So I sat around for about a while thinking someone's going to make something that I want, and that never happened. So here I am. So during that kind of lockdown period thinking about this problem, we decided at work to put a bit of effort into trying to make something. So instead of, it's like a library. We want a library of resources that are cybersecurity related, and we want it completely automated, and we want it completely self-maintaining in nature. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to waste time touching things. We started developing it properly kind of around 2022. We made it public in early 2023, and since then we've just been building features as we see fit. We've made it for our team, so we integrate it with some of our work, some of our tools, and I've got some examples of that. Seb Mackey, who works with us, is a security engineer, so he helps us build his tooling, and he's been one of the main people behind this. We've heavily focused on content analysis and really trying to extract useful data about resources to support many use cases. And Talkback is a web UI, mobile friendly, and there's an API which we built as well. But we prototyped it, did that public release, but we did a GraphQL API late last year, and then today there's a couple of cool features that I want to talk about. The use cases that we wanted to support is, I guess, in like really simple, just to get everyone on the same page, is like we just want to view recent publications and news. So what blog posts, slides, videos, and so on, what open source projects are coming out or what are being talked about again, news in the industry. We want full text search, and this is probably maybe where the desire came from. It's like my shaving the yak is giving this presentation, because if we're doing an assessment and I want to say what resources or news or things that are relevant, maybe there's some slide deck from 20 years ago and it talks about a function that I'm, as part of a code base that we're reviewing, I want to know that. And that's kind of where this thing has really started from. But I also want to be able to be quite powerful with search operations as well. The idea of being able to drill down into specific topics, so if you work in forensics or IR, or if you're doing exploit development or whatever it is you're doing, being able to just to filter on all that. Or also topics, so you might be interested in like a really specific system component, or you're interested in a set of tools, whatever it might be. And then the final one is integrations, and that's kind of maybe one of the most important things about keeping things seamless when people are working, so you can integrate it into your workflows. So that's kind of the intro. For data processing, when we started building this and we want it to be automated and self-maintaining, we have to start somewhere. And the general idea was we want to index of resources that are security related that go back a decent amount of time that humans have vetted, and we want to be able to just grab them all, and we'll use that as our initial data seed. And we chose Google BigQuery for our netset, and we basically grabbed all this data. It's just an RSS feed with a bunch of URLs and timestamps. But from this point, we had at least a lot of URLs, and now we need to work out how we're going to continue building the system to make this autonomous and featureful. So we need to index and parse all content which we receive. And the second thing is we need more sources than that. We need to be able to be smart about how we dynamically monitor sources. The way indexing works in a really simple way is new resources come into Talkback, and then if it's web related, let's say it's a blog post, we have to write something to parse the web content and extract out the content of the article. So like on the Google Project Zero screenshot blog post, we want the stuff in green to be indexed and associated to the resource. We don't want all the footers and sidebars and so on, because that might talk about other things that have nothing to do with it and it will taint our data. So we've done that, it works pretty well. And if it's not a web page, we want to be able to index this as well. So we use Apache Ticker for this. So if it's a PDF or it's a PowerPoint or whatever, we then grab whatever the content is and we throw it into Elasticsearch. From there, we have to extend sources. And the general thing is there's kind of two angles predominantly that it focuses on. One is social media, and the other one is RSS feeds. And the goal is really for Talkback to be much more focused on tapping into all the RSS feeds, so that's the reliable source, and you're going straight to the source of the person who's creating the content. But we use social media in a few ways as well. The summary of it is that when we pass new resources, we look up, is there an Atom feed, is there an RSS feed for where this is hosted, and we store it in a library. And then we have a bunch of logic with some considerations for following and prioritizing RSS feeds later. But we also tap into social media activity, and we take all the kind of features such as likes and follows and retweets or whatever it's called, and then we store all those accounts as mediums. So all the social media accounts we're kind of tracking as well. And that's one kind of angle, but the second angle is really conference archives. And this came about where we said, Reddit and social media and all this other stuff isn't capturing, conference papers and publications going back 20, 30 plus years. And we actually want that data because we want to index it. So we wrote another module which was basically, it's a bit of a pain to pass all this conference data, but basically we went out to Black Hat and Usenix and a handful of other conferences just to index all their data. So we were grabbing all the PDFs and PowerPoints and stuff and throwing it in as well. And we also used a tool it's like a website called Think Citation, and that's done by some folks out in South Africa. They make the Canary tokens, and they have this resource available as well. It's a big index of conference archives and presentations. So when we're passing a PDF, we want to give it some context about what conference was it at and so on. Over the time of where we're at now, our data is obviously much more heavy in recent years. For many reasons, it's the quality of our coverage, of our sources, but also there's a lot more content being produced. But a lot of our index data goes back all the way into the 90s. We also can pull up PDFs and stuff from the early 2000s, so whatever. So there's relatively good coverage, but it could get better from here. Now, one of the things about extending resources is this is all autonomous and it's all computers doing things at the moment, but we actually need some form of supervised learning to be able to assist us in flagging resources. And we came up with this feature called curators. And curators is this idea that in this industry, there's a bunch of people who curate information and publish it regularly. So Risky Business is a really good example of like a long track record of publishing. This are the articles that I'm talking about. Thinkscape's Quarterly do a quarterly PDF, which we grab and we index as well. We do TLDRSec and a bunch of popular like kind of newsletters. CTO at NCSC is run by Ollie Whitehouse. But they're different angles and the different perspectives from people in different roles in the industry, and we wanted to have that breadth of coverage. But we use this, or resources that are being flagged by these curators to help train our data set a bit. When resources come in, we run a bunch of modules. And there's quite a few modules that run, and I'm showing the ones that I think kind of give you an idea about the different types of features we're trying to go for. When new resources come in, we automatically archive it in the Wayback Machine, and we do this just in case stuff gets taken down. We want it saved forever. And the second thing is we calculate the reading time. We extract out the RSS feeds, which I talked about before. We identify things like CVEs and references to CWEs as well, so we can cross-reference to that information using the API. We run a bunch of word cloud generations and screenshots and a bunch of other stuff. And we also do cross-references as well, because we have a library of resources we collect, and there might be like, it might talk about other blog posts that like inspired the work, or it might link to a GitHub repo, but there also might be in the other direction as well, but it might be news articles and stuff like that as well. So we do all the cross-referencing. So on the right, you can see like kind of enhancing some of the data from NVD, and then the references of like this article references other resources and other resources reference this resource. Now, this slide and this feature has been something which has evolved over the last, I think, since when we started it, which we prototyped some classifiers, and we wanted to define a bunch of categories in this industry, such as, I said like forensics or exploit development or ICS or whatever it is. And we want to be able to give resources like a one-to-many relationship. We want to bundle them into buckets automatically. And the first prototype was terrible, then OpenAI came along and helped us out a lot. But what happens is we have the candidate list of categories which are defined in the system, and then we run this classifier to throw it into, this is predominantly about exploit development, but it also might talk about networking concepts or cryptography or whatever. So it's a one-to-many, and it gives the rationale per resource why it's being categorized this way. And it's actually in a really good place at the moment. And the second thing is we wanted to extract topics. And topics is like, what exactly is this resource talking about? So categories are one thing, but topics are completely different. So is it talking about specific tools, or is it talking about specific system components or specific operating systems or frameworks or whatever? So we extract that out as well. And this classifier has run back a good 20 plus years across all the resources. So this screenshot is showing that this resource is categorized as exploit development, and it talks about Chrome and V8. But we have that data set, so we can now view everything about Chrome or everything about V8. Summaries and ranking. So we really want to have, this is about two features. The first feature is like a TLDR for every resource. And it's basically built on the notion that let's create 5 bullet points, because 5 bullet points seems like the sweet spot of summarizing content down. So it does the intro, the general gist of things, and then kind of like the conclusion or takeaway. This is done automatically for every resource we pass. And so this is an example on the right, as you can see, like this random article has that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences that summarize the content, but it's actually a 5-minute read. That's just for skim reading and for a few features we have in the UI. We also made a custom weighted ranking formula for resources, and it's basically trying to give it a 1 to 100 score of saying how legit is this resource. And legit basically means we think about the popularity on social media, but admittedly that has a lower weighting. But we also look, has it been featured by curators? Has this home where it's hosted been featured by curators before? How frequently do they post? Like maybe they're spamming stuff a bit too much, so we might reduce the weighting. And we also think about the cross-references and how legit those cross-references are. So we're trying to when trying to make a system like this, we want to remove our personal biases and have kind of like a general consideration across the data model that we capture. And that's where it currently sits. And I think it works pretty well, but we've refined it quite a few times when there's been like some flood of something come in and we need to factor in some logic to reduce the score. So UI and UX. So it's web and mobile friendly. We put quite a bit of time to make it mobile friendly because a lot of people admittedly use their phones for scrolling stuff. This is just a screenshot of the landing page. It shows trending resources for the past week. You can look at trending vulnerabilities, trending topics, and so on. But browsing and filtering is really important based on the use cases I talked about before, and also search box allows us to do Lucene-based queries. So we can do operators to and, or, and blah, 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 blah. It's actually pretty powerful. You can use this completely without registering an account. It will save a bunch of like your history and your favorites. Like you can save things for reading later. That's all done in local storage if you don't have an account. If you do have an account, you can persist that. And the GraphQL feeds. So we developed it using GraphQL. So you can go and create an account. You can then get an API token, and you can then see the schema and create your own queries and stuff. We've actually, this is, Zoltan and Dan just presented on MCU stuff. And one of the things that we've prototyped but we haven't released yet as part of this research was a VS Code extension that allows us to integrate Talkback into VS Code. So we can say, oh, we're looking at these specific functions, or we're looking at these specific technologies or libraries, and then we can bring in related research that's coming up in VS Code. So yeah, that's kind of where things are at. I hope I have internet. So there's a few features. I talked about the home page. So if I want to just like scroll, it shows the screenshot and whatnot. But you get this preview pane. The preview pane kind of gives the summary of the content. It shows what topics it's talking about, and it relates to ICS and net. This one's been classified this way. If I view the full details, I then get kind of like the resource detail view. I can see the OpenAI summary. I can see the word cloud. We show where it's hosted, and we capture where everything is hosted, and how many resources we've seen, the ISP, and all that sort of stuff. You can see the the classifier results, and then you can see like this cross-reference, and you can read this resource as well if it loads. Then there's another feature called Chronicles. So if it's going across, there's resources is really where you can go get everything, and there's filters on the right. So this is a little filter button. You can do like tags, you can do topics, you can see if it's featured by specific people, you can do URL searches, keyword searches, and so on. You can change your sorting, so we can go all the way back however many years the data's been captured. You can create feeds from here. You can save resources for reading later, so it's fairly featureful. You can punch in your search terms here, and just because of the Wi-Fi being a bit slow, probably not going to try. But basically, I did one. It could be anything, right? So you might say, I want everything with this. Create process was my example. So I want to find Windows API articles, or maybe I'm interested in, I don't know, like some specific Windows subsystem or whatever I'm searching for. I can do that now. That's resources, but Chronicles is a different feature, and it's basically snapshots of time. So it's by week, by month, or by year. You can browse, and you can even filter by categories and say, I only want to browse these categories by week, by month, by year. You can also browse topics. Just have it right there, I hope it loads. Yeah, so it's a bit of a, this interface is really ugly, but basically, if I want to see everything about Metasploit, this is all sorted, I think, by date, so you can do everything chronologically, or by our ranking score. You can do this with everything, and it shows like whatever we're capturing, whether it's like V8 or whether it's Java or whether it's, you know, whatever the hell it is. Like it could be malware, it could be a toolkit. It shows the URL, the type, and we want to enhance this part a lot because you could do really cool trend analysis and stuff with it. One of the features that we're kind of publishing today, I'm mindful of time, is, you know how I was talking about, we want it to be completely automated, and we leverage curators to be able to help our data set, learn from our data set. So one of the things is like newsletters I find really interesting, because that's a specific angle of someone curating things and publishing it. Some people, like Pat Gray and that, do an amazing job with Risky Business. They get such range of content. But a lot of other ones are quite myopic in nature and quite focused on a specific category. So we have a new feature which is pushed, which is newsletters. So you can create your account, you can go to newsletters, you can then select what categories you're interested in. We want to extend that so you can do topics and all sorts of stuff as well. And then it will send you a weekly digest of like, this is the TLDRs for all the resources, and you can then browse for Talkback, and you can get that on your phone. This is completely free, by the way. This is like just a tool that we wrote selfishly for ourselves. And like, this is actually useful. You can access it at Talkback.sh. We have our blog has a couple of articles on it as well. We'll do one just on newsletters. You can email us if you have bugs. We get emails more often nowadays saying, hey, this feature's broken or whatever. Or can you swipe articles and all sorts of stuff. But actually a lot of the suggestions have been really good, and we're trying to just make it better and better. But the system is running, we're really happy with where it's at. It runs autonomously, don't have to touch it anymore, and it fulfills those use cases where I started off. It's been a pain to write, and it seems easy at face value, but it's been a bit of a pain. So we're happy we've overcome the hurdles to get it to where it is. OpenAI saved us heaps of time. We only use it in very specific ways. There's no reliance. This isn't an AI tool. It is and it isn't. And yeah, we'll just keep pushing updates. And if you have features, let us know. Hope you find it useful. If you do, tell people about it, and yeah, let us know what you think.